I was just looking for a digital scan of my third birthday party. I remembered it was saved in an album titled Us, stored on an old iPad that had been shoved in a junk drawer for months. I wiped the dust off the screen, plugged it in, waited impatiently for the red battery icon to turn into the Apple logo, and then waited for the cloud to sync. I scrolled through years of memories until a blue bubble popped up at the top of the screen. It was a text from a contact saved as bro code. She's finally asleep. God, her voice is like nails on a chalkboard lately. My stomach dropped. I knew that syntax. I knew that timing. It was my fiancé, Riley. My name is Treasure. I'm 27 years old, a marketing manager, and I thought I was 3 months away from marrying the love of my life. I thought I had a loyal circle and a bright future. But in the span of 3 seconds, my entire reality shattered. I scrolled up. Bro code wasn't a college buddy. It was Bree, my best friend, my maid of honor, the woman currently helping me pick out floral arrangements. I stood frozen in the hallway, reading hundreds of messages. They weren't just flirting, they were dissecting me. They laughed about my anxiety attacks. They mocked the way I chewed. But the worst part was the plan. They were waiting for the wedding to pass, so they could use my inheritance to fund a penthouse lifestyle they had already picked out. My hand shook, but I forced myself to grab my phone and snap photos of the screen immediately. I needed evidence. Suddenly, the front door lock clicked. I heard Riley's deep laugh, followed by Bree's giggle. They walked in together. I had to act normal, or I would lose everything. I locked myself in the bathroom and turned on the shower to drown out my sobbing. As the hot water hit the tiles, my mind flashed back to where this nightmare actually began, 6 months ago. It had seemed so innocent at the time. I was overwhelmed with vendor contracts and save the dates. Bree had sat me down, pouring me a glass of wine, and said, "Treasure, you're turning into a bridezilla. Let me handle Riley. I'll be his emotional outlet, so you can focus on the logistics. He just needs to vent." I had thanked her. I had actually thanked her for stealing my life. Over the last few months, the dynamic had shifted subtly. Bree started calling me high-strung in front of our friends. She positioned herself as the cool girl who understood Riley's need for space. She even started borrowing my clothes, claiming she forgot hers, but she never gave them back. It felt like she was trying on my skin. Back in the present, I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror. My hands were shaking violently. This wasn't an affair. This was a hostile takeover. They wanted my money, my wedding, and my life, minus me. I wiped my face, turned off the water, and opened the door. I knew I couldn't just leave. I had to destroy them first. Later that night, while Riley snored beside me, I slipped out of bed and went to my home office. I needed to see the damage in black and white. I pulled up our wedding spreadsheets and bank statements, my heart pounding against my ribs. The financial picture was worse than I thought. I realized I had been paying for absolutely everything: the venue, the catering, the band, the honeymoon. However, Riley had insisted on putting his name on every single contract. He had claimed it was about pride and feeling like the man of the house, even though the money was transferred from my savings account to his checking account every month to pay the bills. Bree was listed as the event planner and primary contact on all the forms. I felt sick. They were building their credit score and social status on my dime. Then I saw it, a text I had missed earlier on the iPad. Bree had messaged Riley 2 days ago. "Make sure she approves the venue upgrade transfer before you dump her next year. We need that deposit locked in." The tears stopped instantly. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard rage. They weren't just cheating, they were conning me. They thought I was a helpless ATM with a pulse. I closed the laptop. I decided right then that I wouldn't cry another tear for them. I was going to make them pay for every single cent. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the most expensive law firm in the city. I sat across from a woman named Mrs. Sterling, a shark of a lawyer with eyes that could cut glass. I laid everything out, the texts, the bank statements, the contracts. I need to know if I'm liable, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Riley signed the contracts, but the money comes from me. Mrs. Sterling reviewed the documents for what felt like an eternity. Finally, she looked up and smiled. It was a terrifying smile. Treasure, this is your golden ticket. Since your signature is nowhere on these vendor contracts, only Riley's as the groom and Bree's as the organizer, you are not legally bound to pay a dime. You are essentially a third-party donor. If the donation stops, the debt falls entirely on the signatories. I felt a wave of relief, so strong I almost collapsed. But listen to me, she warned, leaning forward. If you confront them now, they will cancel the contracts and minimize the damage. They will walk away with bruised egos but clean wallets. If you want justice, you have to wait. You have to let them dig the hole deeper. I understand, I said. I'm going to hand them the shovel. The first phase of my plans began that very evening. I spent the afternoon on the phone with my bank. I deliberately flagged my own main transfer account for suspicious activity, effectively freezing all outgoing wire transfers for a standard investigation period. At dinner, the chaos started. Riley's phone buzzed. It was the wedding venue manager. I watched Riley's face turn pale as he listened. He hung up and looked at me with panic in his eyes. Babe, the venue said the deposit bounced. They're threatening to give our date away if we don't pay by tomorrow. I dropped my fork, feigning absolute distress. Oh no, it must be the trust fund audit. My financial advisor warned me that the annual review might freeze my liquidity for a week. I completely forgot. Riley looked like he was about to vomit. A week? We don't have a week. I reached across the table and grabbed his hand, squeezing it reassuringly. It's okay, honey. Just put it on your credit card for now. As soon as the audit clears next week, I'll wire you double the money to cover the interest and the points. Think of the travel rewards you'll get. I watched the greed flicker in his eyes. He didn't see a trap, he saw a profit. Double, he asked. Of course, I lied smoothly. You're saving the day. He pulled out his credit card. He had no idea he just signed his own financial death warrant. A few days later, Bree accompanied me to my final wedding dress fitting. This was supposed to be a moment of pure joy, but the air in the boutique felt toxic. As I stood on the pedestal in my gown, Bree circled me like a vulture. It's stunning, Treasure, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. But are you sure about the waistline? It looks a little snug. Maybe we should let it out? I just don't want you looking puffy in the photos. I felt a sting of insecurity, but then I saw her phone light up on the velvet couch behind me. She had just texted Riley. I held up my own phone, pretending to snap a mirror selfie of the dress. Instead, I focused the camera on the reflection of her phone screen and pinched to zoom in until the text was legible. The old Treasure would have cried. The new Treasure saw an opportunity. I smiled brightly at the seamstress. Actually, Bree is right. I want to look perfect. Let's add the Swarovski crystal belt and the custom lace train we talked about. I know it's an extra $3,000, but Riley insists on the best. I reached into my purse. Riley gave me his heavy metal platinum card to keep in my wallet for emergencies and status. He'd want me to use it. I turned to Bree. He loves getting the points, right? Bree's smile faltered, but she nodded, trapped. Totally. I watched with satisfaction as the seamstress swiped Riley's card for a dress he would never see me wear. With the dress deposit secured on Riley's debt pile, I moved to the next phase, the upgrades. I needed to maximize their financial ruin, and I knew exactly how to do it. I played on Bree's desperate need to feel superior to me. We were meeting with the florist, a high-end designer who charged a fortune. I looked at the sample bouquets and sighed. I don't know, Bree. I'm so bad at this aesthetic stuff. You have such impeccable taste. What would you do if this was your wedding? Bree lit up. She loved being the expert. Well, she said, flipping her hair, I would definitely go for the imported orchids and the floral archway. It's much classier. Let's do it, I said impulsively. Let's upgrade everything to the platinum package. The open bar, the live jazz band, the orchids, all of it. The florist hesitated. That's an additional $15,000 commitment. Bree, you sign off on the design choices, I said, handing her the clipboard. I'll wire the reimbursement next week when my funds clear. Just get it locked in so we don't lose the vendor. Desperate to look powerful and rich in front of the vendor, Bree signed her name as the guarantor on the contract addendum. She had just legally bound herself to a debt that was bigger than her car loan. The following weekend was the joint bachelor and bachelorette trip to a lakeside resort. This was the most critical part of my extraction plan. While everyone was loading the cars, I put on my best acting performance. I clutched my head and squinted at the light. Guys, I have a migraine, I whispered, sounding weak. I can't go. You all go ahead. I'll just sleep it off here. Riley barely hid his relief. Are you sure, babe? We'll miss you. Go, I insisted. Have fun. The moment their cars pulled out of the driveway, I dropped the act. I didn't sleep. I worked. I had rented a storage unit 3 towns over. For the next 12 hours, I packed up my most valuable possessions. My jewelry, my designer bags, my electronics, and my grandmother's heirlooms. I didn't want the apartment to look empty, so I replaced my expensive items with cheap dupes and empty boxes I had bought online. I filled the jewelry box with costume jewelry. That night, alone in the half-empty apartment, I opened the Find My app on the iPad. Since it was linked to his iCloud account, I could see the exact GPS location of his iPhone under Devices. He and Bree were both in the master suite that was supposed to be ours. They weren't even hiding it anymore. My heart hardened into stone. I was safe, and they were digging their own graves. 2 weeks before the wedding, our apartment lease came up for renewal. This was a hurdle I had anticipated. The leasing office sent over the digital contract for a 12-month extension on our luxury 2-bedroom unit. I sat Riley down at the kitchen island. Honey, we have a problem with the lease. He looked up from his phone, annoyed. What now? Because of the audit on my trust fund, my credit score is temporarily flagged. I lied effortlessly. The landlord said I can't be the primary signer this year. We need a primary tenant with good credit, or we lose the apartment. Riley panicked. He loved this apartment. It was his status symbol. I can't afford this place on my own salary, treasure. I know, I said soothingly, but Bree has great credit and a solid salary, right? Why don't you and Bree sign the lease as the primary tenants? Between her income and yours, you should qualify. I'll still pay the rent every month like always, but your names are just a formality to satisfy the landlord. It made perfect sense to them. They were planning to live here together after they dumped me anyway. They exchanged a look and agreed. Riley and Bree signed a legal document holding them responsible for $4,000 a month in rent. They had no idea I wouldn't be paying a single cent of it. The universe works in mysterious ways. Just as my revenge plan was cementing, my career skyrocketed. I received an email from corporate. I had landed the senior director of marketing position I had interviewed for months ago. It came with a massive raise and a relocation package to Chicago. I accepted it immediately. I didn't tell a soul. That same afternoon, I was cleaning up the living room when I saw a notification on the iPad. It was a text message from a coworker named Dave. My heart skipped a beat as I read it on the lock screen. Man, I can't believe they fired you effective immediately. Security just cleared your desk. Call me. I waited for him to come home, expecting him to tell me. Instead, he walked in, loosened his tie, and complained about a long day at the office. He was lying. He was keeping it a secret because he was banking on my inheritance to save him. He thought he had a safety net. I looked at him, an unemployed cheater with a leased luxury apartment, a maxed-out credit card, and a fiancé who was about to vanish. The stakes had never been higher. He wasn't just losing a relationship. He was walking blindly into complete destitution. And I was the only one who knew. The emotional toll of living a double life was getting heavier every day. One evening, I made a near-fatal mistake. I was so exhausted from packing boxes in secret that I accidentally left the old iPad sitting face-up on the living room sofa. I was in the kitchen when I heard Bree walk into the living room. My heart stopped. If she touched that screen, the game was over. I held my breath, waiting for the scream. Instead, Riley marched in a second later and saw the clutter on the coffee table. He didn't check the iPad, he just snapped. "Treasure, why is this place always a disaster? You leave your junk everywhere." He grabbed the iPad and tossed it onto a pile of magazines without looking at the screen. He turned to me, his face red with fake outrage. "You are so careless. Honestly, sometimes I wonder if you can handle being a wife." Bree stood behind him, smirking. "Don't be too hard on her, Riley. Not everyone is organized like us." I looked at them, the man who was spending my money and the friend who was stealing my future. I swallowed my pride and looked down at the floor. "I'm sorry, Riley. I'll do better." It was the hardest acting performance of my life. I had to play the weak, submissive victim one last time. But inside I was smiling. Yell all you want, I thought. You're about to lose your voice forever. With 1 week left, I initiated the social phase of my plan. I insisted that we hold the rehearsal dinner at the Obsidian, the most exclusive and expensive restaurant in the city. "We need to celebrate properly," I told Riley. "I want everyone there." I personally sent out the invitations. I invited Riley's parents, who had always looked down on me. I invited Bree's entire family. And, most importantly, I invited Uncle Martin. Martin was the wealthiest member of Riley's family, the man Riley desperately wanted to impress and do business with. He was also incredibly judgmental. Putting them in the same room would be a ticking time bomb. Riley was nervous about the cost, but I reassured him. "Don't worry, the trust fund wire covers this, too. Order whatever you want." Later that night, while I was pretending to sleep, I saw Riley's phone light up on the nightstand. It was a text to Bree. "Just got the dinner residential set. 1 more week of pretending to like her cooking, and then we have her money. Then we can finally ditch the loser." I waited until he was in the shower, unlocked his phone, and took a photo of that text with my own phone. That was it. The smoking gun. I didn't need any more proof. I was ready to pull the trigger. For days before the wedding, the tension was suffocating. The banking error excuse was running on fumes. My phone was blowing up with calls from the wedding planner, the caterer, and the venue manager. They all wanted the final balances, paid immediately. Riley was pacing the living room, biting his nails. "Treasure," the venue manager just called me again. He said if the wire doesn't hit by Friday morning, they are locking the doors. We need that money now. I sat on the couch, painting my nails, the picture of calm. "Riley, relax. I just got off the phone with the bank manager. The audit is complete." I reached into my bag and pulled out a piece of paper I had printed at the library earlier. It was a photoshopped confirmation page from my bank showing a wire transfer scheduled for the wedding morning with the status. Status, process/federal reference. Hashtag CarX 99824. "Look," I lied, handing him the forgery. "The wire transfer is confirmed for Friday morning at 9 a.m. Show this to the venue. They'll let us in." The relief that washed over his face was pathetic. He grabbed the paper like a lifeline. Thank God. I was so worried. He believed me. He had no idea the confirmation number was fake. There was absolutely nothing coming on Friday except silence. 48 hours before the wedding. This was the point of no return. I told Riley and Bree that I had arranged a surprise spa day for them to relax before the big weekend. "You two have worked so hard planning everything," I said, handing them a gift card, which I had bought with the last few dollars on Riley's credit card. Go get massages. I'll stay here and handle the last-minute logistics." They left, grinning like Cheshire cats, thinking they had won. The moment their car disappeared around the corner, I moved. I called the movers I had booked weeks ago. They arrived in 10 minutes. Because I had already packed the good stuff into hidden boxes, it only took us 3 hours to clear the apartment of anything that held value. I left the cheap IKEA furniture. I left the old rug. I left his clothes. Finally, I walked into the kitchen. I took the old iPad, wiped the screen one last time, and plugged it into the charger so it wouldn't die. I went into display settings, set auto lock to never, and opened the messaging app to the bro code thread. I didn't write a note. I didn't leave a ring. I just walked out the door, locked it, and dropped the key down the sewer grate outside. I got in my car and drove toward the highway. I didn't look back. I wasn't there to see it, but I know exactly how it happened. I had played the scene in my head 1,000 times. Riley came home around 5 p.m., his skin glowing from the facial he couldn't afford. He probably walked in calling my name. "Treasure? We're back. You should have seen the sauna." Silence. He would have walked into the living room and noticed the echo. The TV was gone. The paintings were gone. He probably ran to the bedroom next. The closet doors would be wide open, his side full, my side completely bare. No dress. No shoes. No suitcases. Panic would have set in right then. He would have run back to the kitchen, looking for a note, looking for an explanation. And then he would have seen it, the iPad, glowing on the counter. He would have walked over, confused. He would have looked at the screen. And there, staring back at him, were his own words. "She's a marshmallow. We'll use her money. Can't wait to ditch the loser." I imagine the blood draining from his face. I imagine him scrambling to check his bank app, hoping against hope that the money was still there. He would see his checking account, minus $450. He would check the pending wire transfers, $0. That was the moment his heart stopped. That was the moment he realized he wasn't the groom. He was the victim. Word travels fast in a small town. I heard, after finding the iPad, Riley called Bree in a blind panic. She rushed over, and for the first time, they weren't laughing at me. They were terrified of me. They checked every account, every hiding spot, but I was a ghost. Instead of admitting defeat, they decided to dig their hole even deeper. They concocted a desperate lie. They started calling family members, sobbing, claiming that I had suffered a severe mental breakdown and ran away due to cold feet. They painted me as unstable and cruel. Then they made the most arrogant decision of their lives. Since the venue had accepted the wire confirmation paper I forged and allowed them access, they decided to hold the wedding anyway. They framed it as a support Riley party. They thought they could save face, collect the cash gifts from guests, and then sue me later for the costs. "We can't let the food go to waste," Bree reportedly told a bridesmaid. "We'll turn this into a celebration of dodging a bullet." They put on their best clothes, Bree in a dress far too white for a maid of honor, and headed to the venue. They stood at the entrance, playing the victims, accepting hugs and sympathy. They actually thought they were going to get away with it. I didn't have to guess what happened next. My cousin, the only person I had let in on the plan, was recording the whole thing and discreetly streaming it to me. On my laptop screen, I saw that the reception was in full swing. The champagne was flowing and the band, which I had upgraded to the most expensive package, was playing soft jazz. Riley was holding a microphone, about to give a speech about his heartbreak. That was the exact moment I pressed send. I was hundreds of miles away, sitting in a coffee shop. I had opened my laptop, where I had saved a backup of every single screenshot and chat log weeks ago. I had drafted a mass email and a group text message to the entire guest list. Riley's parents, Uncle Martin, Bree's family, and our mutual friends. I attached the full PDF dossier to the email. To the text message, I attached a single, high-resolution image, a screenshot of the worst message between them, with the caption, "Check your email for the full story." Through the video feed, a sound rippled through the room. Ding. Ping. Buzz. One by one, guests pulled out their phones. The room went dead silent. On the screen, I watched Riley freeze on stage as he saw his mother's face turn from pity to pure horror. I watched as Uncle Martin read the text screenshot where Riley called him an arrogant old wallet who needs to die so we can get the inheritance. Then the whispering started. Then the walking out began. The exodus was swift. Within 10 minutes, half the room was empty. Riley and Bree stood alone on the dance floor, surrounded by uneaten lobster and wilting orchids. But the real nightmare was walking through the double doors. According to a mutual friend who was there, the venue manager approached Riley with a stern look, holding a printout. "Mr. Riley, our finance department just flagged the wire confirmation number you provided as invalid. The bank says it doesn't exist." Riley, sweating profusely, tried to stutter. "No, my fiancé handled it." "Your fiancé isn't here!" The manager cut him off coldly. "You signed the contract. We allowed the event to start in good faith based on that document, but we cannot serve the main course or cut the cake until the $20,000 balance is settled immediately." Riley tried his card again. Declined. Humiliated, Bree had to run to her table and drag her father over. Her parents, who had just read the texts where Bree called them ATM machines, had to pull out their retirement credit card to bail them out to avoid an arrest for theft of services. I heard her father didn't speak a word to her. He just paid the bill, looked at her with disgust, and walked out. 2 months have passed since that night. I haven't seen them, but I know what happened. The fallout was total and complete. Riley is currently living on a blow-up mattress in the empty luxury apartment. He can't afford the rent, so he's being evicted. The credit card companies have already filed lawsuits against him for the debt he racked up on the ring, the dress deposit, and the spa day. He is unemployed, broke, and alone. Bree didn't fare any better. It turns out one of the screenshots I leaked included her gossiping about confidential client information from her job. A mutual friend forwarded it to her HR department. She was fired for violating her NDA and lost her professional license. And the love they shared? It evaporated the second the money did. Without me as their common enemy and bankroll, they turned on each other. Riley blames Bree for the upgrades. Bree blames Riley for not checking the accounts. They are stuck on a lease together, hating each other's guts, forced to live in the wreckage they created. Their relationship was built on theft and cruelty. It couldn't survive the truth. I am writing this from the balcony of my new apartment in Chicago. The city lights are beautiful tonight. My new job is challenging, but I love it. I have new friends who don't know my past, and my bank account is fully recovered. Yesterday, I received one final letter from home. Riley tried to sue me for emotional distress and breach of promise, thinking he could still squeeze some money out of me. My lawyer, Mrs. Sterling, responded with a simple countersuit. We presented the receipts for the personal loans I gave him over the years, plus the receipt for the engagement ring, which I had purchased on my own credit card because it had declined at the jewelry store. Since I bought it legally, it was my property, not a gift from him. The total came to more than he was suing me for. He dropped the lawsuit this morning. I took a sip of my coffee and blocked his number for the last time. I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I just removed my support and let gravity do the rest. They wanted a life of luxury at my expense. In the end, I got the luxury of peace, and they got exactly what they deserved, each other, and a mountain of debt. I closed my laptop and smiled. I won.